Hey everyone, and welcome to What Did I Miss? 2023 cannot come fast enough for Star Trek fans, as we patiently wait for the upcoming third and final season of Star Trek Picard. One of the biggest reasons for this is the known inclusion and return of the main cast from The Next Generation, most of whom have not been seen on screen since the film Star Trek Nemesis over 20 years ago. But there has been many hints that the final season of Star Trek Picard will also see the return of characters and storylines from another beloved series, that being Deep Space Nine. Picard showrunner Terry Matalas has admitted that he is a huge fan of all the Star Trek series, not just The Next Generation, and now he has confirmed in an interview what fans have been waiting to hear, which is that Deep Space Nine will not only be referenced, but will play a role in the upcoming season of Picard. In the interview with Den of Geek, Mr. Matalas also reveals many other details about the plot without getting into spoilers, so I wanted to go through the interview and pick out what I thought was interesting and let you know what I think will happen, including which TNG cast member I think will not make it out of the season alive. But before I do, I just want to say a quick thank you for clicking on this video, and ask that you please hit the like button to help get my videos out to more Star Trek fans. Terry Matalas is a creator that likes to speak to fans on social media and in interviews, and through most of 2022, he has been sharing things about the upcoming season of Picard. This has included everything from him answering questions directly on his Twitter page to formal interviews with sites like Den of Geek. Star Trek fans have also been treated to some pretty shocking trailers that not only show the return of the original TNG cast, but also 3 possible villains that the cast will have to face off with. Those being Data's evil brother Lore, a hologram of the Sherlock Holmes villain Professor Moriarty, as well as a mysterious new character, Vadic. But you know that they have not given away all the surprises yet, and the big shocker this season seems to have something to do with Deep Space Nine. It is curious that up until this point, the characters and storylines that were created during the run of DS9 had not really been referenced by any of the new Star Trek series under the Alex Kurtzman creative umbrella. While characters and concepts created by legacy series like Voyager, the original series, and of course The Next Generation have been featured prominently, many fans like myself thought that this would be remedied in the second season of Picard after the Reckoning Tablet, an artifact that debuted on an episode of DS9, was featured in a trailer. But unfortunately, the item was never mentioned during that season of the show, and the closest references we got to DS9 were just some skulls in a trophy room. Then earlier in 2022, as I reported on this channel, a Star Trek insider named Robert Meyer Burnett on the John Campea Show podcast had this to say about the third season of Picard after he was able to see some of it.
Star Trek Picard Season 3 is just a love letter to The Next Generation. And to Deep Space Nine, to be honest. Shh, don't tell anyone I said that.
But now we have our first confirmation that Deep Space Nine will play a role in the third season of Picard from an interview with showrunner Terry Matalas by Ryan Britt. Mr. Matalas had this to say about why he felt DS9 should be a part of the final season of Picard. I think that it's important to Deep Space Nine fans to feel seen. It's a continuation of Voyager 2, of course, with 7 of 9 in our show. If you're going to be in this time period, there's such a rich opportunity to honor what came before. He also goes on to say that there will be a deeper connection between DS9 and Picard beside the inclusion of the character Worf, who served not only on the Enterprise D, but also on Deep Space Nine for 4 seasons of the show. But it is a good bet that the story with DS9 will start with Worf after we heard him say this in the latest Picard trailer.
You should know that I now prefer pacifism to combat.
The last time we saw Worf, he was leaving DS9 with Martok to work on Klingon relations with the Federation after the Dominion War. But he was also anything but a pacifist. In fact, one of the last things we saw him do was to kill the current Chancellor Gowron in one-on-one combat. Something pretty substantial must have happened to him in the 20 or so years since he left DS9, and hopefully we get to see some of that in the upcoming season of Picard. Deep Space Nine could also be brought into the story on Picard through another returning character that has yet to be announced, and if this were the case, I would put my money on seeing the return of Kira Nerys. The third season of Lower Decks featured the return of Colonel Kira along with Quark, as that show was the first of the Kurtzman era to visit the station and its characters. Actress Nana Visitor returned to voice her character on the animated series in events that occurred just a few years after the end of the run of DS9. But I would not be surprised if she also filmed some scenes for the upcoming season of Picard while she was in the studio. It would make a lot more sense for her character to return than Quark, since Quark and Worf did not really have a relationship, while Kira was much more involved in the most important events of the Dominion War. There is also some precedent for an actor returning in this manner, since John Delancey first reprised his role as Q in the second season of Lower Decks, before returning as the character again during the second season of Picard. I'm sure it is standard practice to allow these actors to complete both projects at the same time if possible, and the third season of Picard was being filmed while the third season of Lower Decks was in production. So in my opinion, I think there's a good chance that we could see the return of Kira in live action during the third season of Picard. Besides Lower Decks visiting the station, another big event concerning Deep Space Nine occurred in 2022, which you may not be aware of, and that is that the return of Benjamin Sisko was depicted in a comic book series that is designed to tie into the current batch of shows that Star Trek is producing. I did a full video on my channel about that comic where I go through the story of how Sisko was brought back, so if you want to check that out, I will leave a link to it here in the video and in the video description. I am glad to see that it looks like Deep Space Nine is finally back, and hopefully this will lead to more connections made to different series in the future. Speaking of the future, Terry Matalas also seemed to infer that he has plans to continue on with some of these characters in new stories. Whether that be in another new series, miniseries, or movie though is unclear, but it is obvious that he has no plans of stopping with Star Trek after this last season of Picard concludes. Both Jonathan Frakes and Gates McFadden, who will be reprising their roles as William Riker and Dr. Beverly Crusher respectively, have stated that they would love to continue on with their characters as well, and if there is fan support for another project, then they are ready to go. It was also revealed in the interview that both Will Riker and Beverly Crusher will be major characters this season, and that their inclusion will not result in just a small cameo appearance. Mr. Matalas has stated that Season 3 of Picard will actually start with the audience following Dr. Crusher as she's on the run from some mysterious force. He also stated that the long-teased relationship between her and Jean-Luc Picard will be explored in greater detail. If you recall, the end of the second season of Picard showed a different Jean-Luc who seemed to finally allow himself to care for another person more so than his duty. This change of priorities could open the door for a romantic relationship between the two, something fans have been waiting to see for many years. Mr. Matalas also revealed that Will Riker will not just be a major character throughout the season, even more so than his appearance in the first season of the series, but that he will be at odds with Picard like we have never seen before. This is likely because in the past, Picard and Riker were always bound to the relationship of a captain and first officer. Whereas now, while I'm sure Riker has enough respect for Picard that he would not treat him like he did Captain Jellicoe, Riker knows that he doesn't necessarily have to follow Picard's orders anymore. To bring these two characters to this point, something catastrophic must happen, and I think that you can glean what this may be from another quote that Terry Matalas has said about the last season of Picard, which is that all these legacy characters are not guaranteed to make it out of the season alive. If one member of the TNG cast is set for their final voyage, I would guess that that character is Deanna Troi. In the latest trailer for Picard, you can see her character looking in fear towards a bright light that in my opinion looks to be an explosion of some kind. Not only that, but actress Marina Sirtis has stated that she would like to retire from acting and has even changed her residence from California to England. If the rest of the cast would like to continue on after the season and she would rather retire, it would make a lot of sense for her character to be given a proper send-off in a dramatic event on screen. If she does lose her life during the season, you can imagine what this would do to her grieving husband Will Riker, and avenging her death would be something that I could see that would cause a rift between him and Jean-Luc Picard. This would also show a different side of Riker than we have seen before, and one that may be more comfortable for the actor to play than you may realize. Jonathan Frakes has stated in interviews and at conventions that he always saw Riker as a much more dangerous character than he is ever allowed to play on screen, so this may be a chance to bring that version of the character to life. Well, that is all I have this time, but let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Also, let me know if you have any other theories about the final season of Star Trek Picard in the comments below, and I may reference them in a future video. Thank you very much for watching. Please hit the like button if you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time on What Did I Miss?